So, this is the Mavic 2 series drone. It's a Mavic 2 Zoom to be precise. It's used for, doing droney stuff. But it has another use which I'm not sure any of you guys have considered or not. More about it after this. What's up guys, welcome to my channel. My name's Keith and on today's video we're going to be talking about another use for the Mavic 2 series of drones. Now I've been wanting to make this video for quite some time. I saw one guy online try this and I thought what a brilliant idea. I'd love to say it was my idea but it really wasn't, but I thought I can make a video out of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a camera to take some pictures and we're going to use this drone as a photography light. Because what this drone comes with is two super bright LED lights which are used when the drone is landing in the dark to check that the ground is clear. But you can control these manually. You can assign these to one of the under sort of option buttons on the controller, which means you can turn them on and turn them off manually. So what we're going to do, my wife has agreed to be my model and we're going to light her from above using the drone and then take some pictures using my camera. Now, we're not going to be doing this in the studio, obviously. So what we're going to do is we're going to head down to my local beach. I'm hoping we're going to get a decent sunset because that always makes for quite a good background. We're going to wait until it gets mostly dark, just the sun's already gone down behind the horizon. And then we'll get the drone up, place it above my wife and start snapping and hopefully get some really good shots. So I'll talk you through all of that. And then what we'll do is I'll show you how I edit in Lightroom after that. So without further ado, let's get down to the beach with my wife and see what we can capture. We've come down to the beach near my house and the sun is just setting now. My wife's eating barbecued squid and I thought I'd just talk you through the basics before we start taking some shots. So obviously you need a Mavic 2 drone with a light. You can use a different kind of drone, but you'll have to get one of those little LED cube lights and mount it to it. Whereas obviously the Mavic 2 series has it built in. Now the camera that I'm going to be using, in my case it's my little Canon M6. It's a mirrorless SLR effectively, and an SLR is the kind of camera you really want to use for this kind of thing. You can use a bridge camera, but basically what you need to make sure is that you have manual control over your camera and that it can shoot in RAW. This type of shot you really do need to shoot in RAW, and I'll show you why you need to do that later on when I show you the Lightroom phase of this video. But effectively RAW records a lot more information and we're going to need that information. But the camera I'm using, as I said, is a Canon M6. Now I've got the 22mm pancake lens, they call it, which has an aperture of f2. Now the lower your aperture the better, because that means you can also lower your ISO. Higher ISO, especially on the M6, means a lot more noise in your pictures. Now the highest ISO I probably dare go is about 800 on this. But once I've taken all the pictures, I'll talk you guys through what my settings were. But basically, you want to be able to manually shoot. So you control everything on this. And with the Canon M6, you can. This is a great little camera, by the way, guys. I mean, it's about 600 quid. The lens on this is about 200 quid. But for 800 quid, you really do get some really decent shots with this. In actual fact, the equivalent of this in a DSLR would cost you a lot more money. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to set up everything. Make sure you've got a tripod for this as well. I've got my little travel tripod here. Because it's quite windy down here, my camera bag's I'm going to hang my camera bag off it, and that stabilizes the tripod. Anyway, we're going to go and set up and take some pictures and see what we can get. I'll try and record some of it as I go. Anyway, guys, see you in a sec. So the lights come down a fair bit. I've got my camera set up here, but first things first, we've got to get our camera sort of as your camera wants to be. It's really windy, you can probably hear. I'm hoping there isn't that much noise on the microphone, but we want to get our subject position. So in my case, my subject is my wonderful wife. The light is getting about right now, so we're going to get the drone in the air and then I've got the camera at quite low on the tripod because I want to be able to get the drone in the air as well above her. So wife, if you would so kindly go and stand over there so I can line up my camera. Hopefully she's going to. I don't know if you can see her. She's sitting there very very dutifully. So hopefully, darling, would you mind going over there and we'll line up thing. Give me your hat. Because what I'm doing now is just lining up the shot. So I can see my wife, which is pretty good. Yeah, that's fine. So I've got my aperture set to 2. And now what we're going to do is get the drone in the air. Which is, I've got my controller here. I'm not going to bother with the phone. I just need to get the drone up. Now it's quite windy, so the drone is going to use a lot of battery. So what we're doing now is you don't want your center, you don't want her quite center of the drone. So I'm lining up the picture just. Honey, walk forward slightly. Darling, come forward, Nick Noy. There, that's perfect. Yeah. Okay, move to side. So up like that. Yeah. Okay, so we got the drone down now. We've basically lost the sunset. It's now almost completely dark. Thankfully, I brought my video light with me so that you can still see me. But looking at the shots we got on the small screen, I think we got the odd one that was really good. I shot basically on an ISO of between 400 and a shutter speed of 130, but we had some really rich sort of yellows and blues in the background, and because it's quite cloudy, it looks quite cool. The great thing about it is the sky's really big at this part of the beach, and the sun goes down almost straight in front of us, so we've got all of that color behind her with the cloud, with it bouncing off all the clouds and stuff, and with the drone above her. Now I shot her off to the side because I never like to really shoot stuff in the center. It's just me. I don't know if it's professional or not, but I just like to shoot her off to the side. So we've got the clouds on to sort of the right of the picture, and my wife to the left with the drone above her. Now it's quite windy, so the drone was hovering all over the place. The Mavic 2 is quite stable, but it is actually quite gusty down here, so I had to keep moving the drone up and down. So the key to doing this is just snap, 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 snap. You might end up with 100 or 200 pictures, and with any luck, 1 or 2 of those will be really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to head back home now, get the pictures loaded onto Lightroom and see what we've got. Then I'll take you guys through a couple of my Lightroom techniques that I use. No, I'm not a professional at this, but I've learned over time, so hopefully I can show you a few things. Anyway, let's get back to the studio. Okay, so it's now a couple of days later and I've loaded all my pictures into Lightroom, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to briefly take you through what I do in Lightroom to make my pictures sort of pop and sing and zing and look basically cool. Now, I am not a Lightroom professional by any means. Everything I know about Lightroom, I've kind of taught myself or watched videos on YouTube. There's a really cool guy that I found that does a lot of photography that I'm really interested in, and his videos or his tutorials on Lightroom are really, really cool. I'll leave him in the description below, but I suggest you check out his channel if you want to sort of improve your Lightroom skills beyond my meager attempt at showing you what I do. Anyway, let's jump into Lightroom now, and I'll show you what I do to make these pictures sing. I've chosen a picture here which I really, really like. I love how my wife looks in this picture and her wonderfully beautiful smile. It's one of the reasons why I married her. She complained about her hair being a mess, but I think it looks really cool. She wanted to wear a hat, but I thought the hat would mask the light of the drone, and I wanted the light of the drone on her face, but she wasn't too pleased about that. But I think this picture looks really good. At the moment, it's looking really flat. That's partly because we shot it in RAW, but when you shoot things in RAW, you can do a lot more with them, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. But first things first, what we want to do is we want to go down to our lens correction, and we want to tick on the first option, and then on the second option, enable profile corrections, which basically loads in your camera profile, because in the metadata of the picture, it includes what the camera is and what lens it is, and as you can see, it's popped up here, and already the picture's slightly lighter. Now, the reason I always say to shoot in RAW is because RAW basically records a hell of a lot more information. A JPEG is a compressed file basically, so it's taking out as much information as it can get away with to make the file smaller. It's a bit like MP3s and CDs versus vinyl. Anybody that's seriously into audio will always tell you vinyl sounds better because MP3s compress, as do CDs. It's the same with JPEG. So always shoot in RAW. I mean, just to give you an example of that, as you can see, it's really dark down here at the moment, but if I lift up the shadows, there's a lot of detail in there that you can see. I'll lift up the exposure as well. There's a lot more detail there. Now on a JPEG, you just wouldn't have that level of detail even when you lifted up the shadows. Now, getting on with editing this picture, I am going to slightly adjust the exposure. I'm going to make it slightly lighter. And because I like my pictures quite contrasty, I'm going to up the contrast. That's the first few things I do. Then what I'm going to do is go down to the tone curve and slightly up my highlights and slightly down my shadows just to make it a bit of an S. That's what I do with video editing as well. Now I'm going to give it a little bit of vibrance to make those colors pop and a tiny bit of saturation. But that has given us a bit of an issue in the fact that this is quite white here and it looks a bit overexposed. So what we're going to do is we're going to knock down the highlights and we're going to knock down the whites. And as you can see, it kind of takes the intensity of the white out of the back of the clouds, which is exactly what we wanted to do. I'm going to knock the shadows down because they were way too high. I'm really happy with the white balance at the moment, but we might come back to that in a minute. Now I'm going down to my HSL color, and what I want to do is basically take down the luminosity of those oranges and yellows a little bit, so that again they're slightly duller, but I say slightly duller, they're not as white. And I'm going to up the luminosity a bit of the pinks. Now another thing, because of her skin tone, it's quite orange because I've adjusted this. Now we can slightly combat that by basically in my highlights up, I'm going to set it in sort of yellows and oranges, which should make these sing a bit. But in the shadows, we're going to put it on blue, which should, and as you can see, her skin tone is changing around about there. Now that looks quite good already. What I would like to do is up the exposure slightly because it's a bit dark, but I want to focus on her. Now we can set a V&A in effects here, but the problem is it only centers it. It doesn't allow you to adjust where the center point is. And I want, because she's off center on purpose, I want to really center it on her. So we can basically use a circular filter here and we'll move it down a bit. We'll get it up like that. And what we are going to do here, make it down a bit, basically on the drone light. What we're going to do is we're going to knock down the exposure, and what you'll see is it affects everything around that filter and then slightly graduated into the center. But what that does is the same thing as a V&A basically. The other thing we want to do is sharpening, but we don't want to sharpen everything because the sky's all right. So there's a trick for you. If you hold down the Option key or Alt key and then move the masking, as you can see, everything's white. So at the moment, everything in white is going to be sharpened. Well, I only want to sharpen her. So by adjusting the masking, as you can see, now it's really only on parts of the background and her. And that's about right. So now I can apply a little bit more sharpening. Being quite a small sensor, you can see there's a lot of noise in there, even at ISO 400. So we are going to have to put a bit of noise reduction in, which should, in theory, that has lessened the noise a bit, which is what we're after. Now, did we add a tiny bit more saturation? We will slightly adjust the luminosity again here, but I'm already quite happy with that. The last thing I want to do is add a graduated filter at the top just to make it slightly darker. I quite like what this does. So again, I'm going to knock the exposure down, but you'll see it's gradual. So at the top, it's kind of slightly masking the drone. We want to know the drone's there, but we want the drone as a kind of background detail. So by making it slightly darker, again, it just draws your attention to where my wife is, and that's what we really want to do. Now, those are basically what I do. There are a lot of things that you can tweak and mess around with, and I spend a lot of time doing that. You can get really obsessive with it, but just to show you the difference, that was what it was like before. That's what it's like now. The colors are popping and everything, and all that information was recorded because we shot in RAW, and that's what the picture basically looks like. Now, here are a few others that I did earlier. As you can see, this, you get some really good shots out of this, and I did this all on what is really a consumer-based camera. It's far from a professional camera. I think Canon's M series cameras are pretty good for their money. The quality you get out of those lenses, you would have to spend a lot more if you were doing it in DSLR format. So I'm really pleased with what the camera did. Its sensor is small, and that's kind of where it falls short a bit, but I mean, I do all my studio work on this camera. I'm pretty impressed with it. Anyway, guys, that's basically what I do in Lightroom. There's a lot more you can do with it. One thing I will mention is I never use presets. I see a lot of these Facebook ads that show presets, and to me, because when you make a preset, you are using a picture as a reference. No one picture is the same. I mean, if you're shooting wedding and you've got a group of pictures that you want to apply to, creating your own presets is fine, but buying presets to me doesn't work. I would much rather learn how to do it myself, and that's what I'm trying to do. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you feel inspired enough to go out and create some of your own shots. If you do, please let me check out a few. I'll be really interested to see what you create. Anyway, guys, as I said, if you like this video, please hit the like button because it really helps my channel, and hit subscribe if you're interested in seeing. I make lots of videos around this, but this was my first photography video. Been wanting to make one for ages. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and wherever you are, I hope you're having fun, and I'll see you in the next video. But for now, bye bye.